All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dolfan of all ages, I am Beast Mikey of Now Riding the Train of Thought. Before we get to the third installment of Miami Mock Mondays, let's talk about the Super Bowl real quick. And though technically the score doesn't follow the rules necessarily of what I'm about to do, the game does kind of sort of follow it because of the way Seattle treated New England. So one last time for the 25/26 season, kids, if you please.
Stop! He's already dead.
Thank you once again. And yeah, what happened last night in Santa Clara was a bloodbath and a massacre. Never mind the Bad Bunny stuff. And to be honest about that halftime show, I wish I could understand what he was saying, but the vibes were great. And Die With a Smile by Lady Gaga is a banger, let it be known. Anyway, congrats Seattle on winning Super Bowl 60, getting a lick back against the Patriots, and the Marshall Lynch commercial after the game was really good, but well done there. Seattle got their lick back, well done. Kenneth Walker just earned himself a serious bag in free agency after winning Super Bowl MVP the way he did and having a really good playoffs overall. He was outstanding in these playoffs. New England kind of got exposed for having a really soft schedule. And the fact that Seattle had a fair fight, and B, they didn't make any dumb mistakes like the AFC teams did, showed itself to be that, yeah, New England had no shot. And I think what we learned here is that Seattle versus the Rams in the NFC Championship, that round 3, that really was the Super Bowl. That was a fair fight, and Seattle happened to win it. So there you have it. Seattle wins the Super Bowl, and they were far and away better than New England, and they were the best team in the league. And to be honest, the Rams were the second best. But that's a power rankings thing. Maybe I'll do that instead of the NHL and NBA next week, but that's a next week thing. Anyway, Miami Mock Mondays. Let's move and let's get to it for Volume 3 of this exercise. Let's get to business. So, I want to do something a little different with the 11th pick this time, and I decided to say, hey, let's go to Coral Gables and get a potentially monstrous tackle/guard and Francis Mauigoa. And I think he could be a monster on the inside or the outside. If Austin's healthy and good to go and is still on this team, cool. Slide him in as your right guard. He could be an absolute monster there. If he's on the outside, maybe, just maybe, he fills the role of Tristan Wirfs at his ceiling. Now, as we know, Tristan Wirfs became an all-pro almost immediately as a rookie, and he helped Tampa Bay win the first Super Bowl hosted by said team in question. If he moves to guard, and arguably because of the full-on versatility and because of his mauling nature, Talise Fuaga was another comp for Mauigoa, and I think that would be a pretty solid one in either case. So I would live with this. I think he could be a better version of Fuaga. Maybe not Tristan Wirfs, especially not right away, but I can see that could be something real nice for Mauigoa with the 11th pick, where you can play him at either spot. And if we keep Austin, there's your right guard, and he could be special at said spot. Let's go to round number 2, and we go to Emmanuel McNeil-Warren as the pick here from Toledo. Obviously, playing in the same secondary as Quinyon Mitchell, but in his case, he played the safety position. Now, watching Nick Emmanwori play his rookie year as spectacularly as he did, I look at this situation and say, hey, we could use one of those kinds of rangy safeties who, if he can come off the blitz, bet. If he can cover people, okay, cool. If he can stop the run, yeah, we could use one of those types of safeties who could be incredibly versatile. And his player comp turned out to be somebody that I have watched for the last few years play tremendously well, especially in college at Penn State, Jaquan Brisker, who, as I watched him grow into a monstrous safety at State College, Brisker was excellent. He could cover people. He was great in zone. He could stop the run. There wasn't much Brisker could not do in the secondary at PSU, and he has parlayed that into what's becoming a good career so far, and potentially very good career in Chicago. And we saw his last game in the divisional round against the Rams. He was excellent, and maybe Chicago's best player. So if you're telling me that Warren can become one of those, I can live with that. Now let's go to round 3 where Miami can really kind of go to work here. And though there isn't really much of a player comp in terms of individually for Hezekiah Massis, the cornerback out of California, there is a style comp in the sense of he is a playmaker. He is a guy who takes the ball from you. He is a guy who is pretty decent in tackling. And when it comes to the defense that Jeff Hafley is going to try to run, which is generally zone-based, he can play well in zone. And for years, I've always complained about Miami's zone coverage and zone defense. It has just not worked. And when it comes to Massis is pretty solid when it comes to zone coverage. Now, the fly in the ointment is the speed factor, where he doesn't have the top end speed. And fortunately, Miami has two of the fastest receivers in the game in Waddle and Tyreek Hill for now. Ideally, we don't have too many of those types of cats for Massis to have to cover. But if it's normal speed, using a 6'1 frame, or 6'2, depending on the circles that you run it to, I would think Massis would be a decent player here, and think long, rangy type of cornerback that could help the cause here for the Dolphins. Miami could use a young boundary corner that could help matters. Though I do like some of the young guys, like we'll see what happens with Kader Kohu and Storm Duck and Juju Brents and Jason Marshall. We'll see what happens with those young corners and if they will remain Dolphins. Especially Kader, who's a free agent and didn't play last season. Next up, we go to a place where Miami has had some linebacker success in the past, in Jacob Rodriguez, coming from Texas Tech. Obviously, Zach Thomas is a former Red Raider and a Hall of Famer in Miami. Anyway, when it comes to Rodriguez, he's bigger than Zach, where Zach was 5'11". Rodriguez is in the 6, he's a little bit taller than that, 6'1", 6'2-ish. And I think Rodriguez could be one of those types of guys who's versatile. He can cover, he's got good range, he can obviously come and stop the run pretty well, he blitz if necessary, but overall just a really good, solid linebacker, and a very good linebacker, to be honest, at Texas Tech. Now, I don't know if he can reach these heights, but it would be nice if he did. Fred Warner is his comp in terms of a linebacker comp, and really that's his ceiling. And if you're telling me that he can become a future Hall of Famer like Warner is about to be, ironically, he also wore 54 and wears 54 now, I would be perfectly fine with Jacob Rodriguez being holding it down as a Dolphins linebacker for years to come, and learning from the likes of Jordan Brooks and Tyrell Dotson, who have both played really well as middle linebackers, or in interior linebackers, if you will, in 3-4 schemes. And obviously Brooks being a first-team All-Pro, that would totally work perfectly well for all of us. Another need to really kind of worry about is the tight end spot to me. And with Darren Waller, we don't know what's going to happen with him. Max Clare was a guy I thought of here at Ohio State. He was the tight end in Purdue before coming to Columbus, and Clare showed himself to be a pretty good tight end in Ohio State with Julian Sand throwing him the rock. Obviously, he was the third or fourth target and didn't have to cook like that because of those two excellent receivers. Well, really 3, potentially, but definitely 2 excellent receivers that will be drafted in first rounds over the next couple of years. In the case of Clare, good receiving threats. He was that more so at Purdue. And a decent blocker, which is something I would rather see Miami have, is a little bit more blocking along with Dolchich. So at least we don't have to have it obvious formations where, okay, Clare's in, obviously it's going to be a pass play. Like, I don't want that. So hopefully this blocking can continue to develop. He become a more balanced tight end, similar to Colston Loveland in size, where he's 6'3", 6'4"-ish. And we saw with Loveland, he came on real strong midway through the season and then continued his way and his play through the playoffs, where he played fairly well in the Packers and the Rams games. But Colston Loveland's a pretty balanced tight end who can do a little bit of everything. I'd be perfectly okay with Clare being our version of Colston Loveland. Now, there is one guy that, once again, I decided to draft again. Now, not last week, but 2 weeks ago, was Dennis Sutton. And again, this is a guy that I really love the motor of. I love the energy and the versatility of Sutton, where we've seen him line up inside sometimes, but he really flourished once he was moved to the outside as an edge rusher, and he was a terror this past season, and easily Penn State's best defensive player, especially after Tony Rojas got hurt. I think he would be a really good edge rusher, either in a 3-4 or especially a 4-3 set. And with his size being 6'5", 6'6"-ish and 270, I think he'd be a menace for a lot of people considering his power and his pure strength. Might come in handy when dealing with the likes of Will Campbell, who got absolutely mauled yesterday by the Seahawks. And this kind of continued for Campbell. He looked awful in some stretches against dudes who were powerful. If you're telling me that DDS once again can be a Preston Smith clone, that works. I mean, Halfley knows about Preston Smith pretty well. I mean, he was there in Green Bay watching Preston Smith become a very good edge rusher. Miami needs an edge rusher one, and I think DDS could be such a thing. Or at the very least, balance out the speed that Chop Robinson can bring, and or Bradley Chubb for that matter, who, again, Chubb had a really good year. And if the play is to shed salary and Chubb goes, then we're obviously going to need another edge rusher of the future. Even if you keep Chubb, obviously you can't have too much depth at pass rushing, and I think DDS would fall in line in that realm. So I'd be perfectly okay with DDS becoming a Dolphin. Next up, we go to a guy who's becoming incredibly popular in Dolphin circles, and that was Malachi Fields. Now, I've seen Fields mocked in a lot of different rounds. I've seen him mocked in rounds 2 through effectively 6, and I was able to catch him here at 149. And Malachi Fields, with his 50-50 ball ability to go get it, and though he's not a top-end speed guy necessarily, he's a guy that's dynamic and a guy that can turn a lot of mistakes from quarterbacks into big-time playmaking catches, and I'm perfectly okay with that. We need some size and some physicality at receiver, and I think Malachi Fields can bring such a thing. And apparently his player comp becomes T. Higgins, which, if you're telling me that we're going to get a T. Higgins clone, that works. That works for me. T. Higgins has shown himself to be an excellent low-end wide receiver 1, high-end, and maybe even the best wide receiver 2 at this moment in time, because Higgins has been spectacular over his career. I'd be perfectly okay with him. That was a guy that Miami could have drafted in 2020 instead of Noah Benogany. Yeah, that could have worked out pretty well for us. Anyway, Malachi Fields, with his 6'4 frame and his physicality and his 50-50 ball, I got to have it, and I got to have it now kind of style, I think would really work out here for Quinn Ewers or whoever Miami's quarterback shall be. Speaking of which, another guy drafted in my first mock will be the way I close out this mock, and it is Drew Aller, who I, again, believe in. I truly do. I truly believe in his size and strength. He just needs somebody to work between the ears. Can Bobby Slowick be that guy as Miami's offensive coordinator? Can he be that guy and help him develop? We saw what he did with C.J. Stroud. It totally worked out in year 1, and it did not work out since, after Slowick especially left. In the case of Aller, I think that's what he kind of needs. And to work on the accuracy, of course. He's got to work on that accuracy sometimes, and sometimes I think he tries too hard to make the spectacular play when the good play is available. That arm, you can't teach it. That size, you can't teach it. That pocket presence and mobility, again, something that you cannot teach. He's got these things. I think he just needs some help between the ears. Can he be Joe Flacco? Where I think Flacco has shown over his career that arm is always live, except for the arm punts, and, well, the current arm punts. And then the pocket presence and mobility, I think I was a little bit more mobile than Flacco at his peak of powers, but I think if Aller can get the mechanics right, and if he can get the thought process correct, I think Drew Aller can be a good quarterback in the NFL, especially with the size and the athleticism. And he's going to finally have a legitimate group of receivers that he really did not have in State College. So give me Drew Aller, especially if I can get him on day 3. I would absolutely take Drew Aller. There you have it. That is my Miami Mocks Volume 3, if you will. Once again, we're doing this next week, next Monday, and see if Miami can fulfill the prophecy that is this logo right here, Super Bowl 61, where Miami is the only team in the league that has both main colors covered in this situation. Can Miami fulfill the prophecy? Or the other one that has Waddle and Nick Bosa as the 2 guys closest to the logo and SoFi Stadium. That would be nice if Miami could actually continue this trend. As for what's coming up next, NBA Power Rankings. That's going to drop on Wednesday or Thursday. The All-Star break will start on the latter day. And will anything change when it comes to any of the 4 tiers? How close can San Antonio get to Oklahoma City as the 1 seed now that the Thunder are getting somewhat healthier? They got Jalen Williams back tonight. And can the Thunder get healthy enough in time to keep the 1 seed away from the Spurs, the Rockets, or the Nuggets? Because they lost to 2 of the Texas teams this past week. Also, Zombie Tier, what's going to happen now that Anthony Davis is pretty much done for this season? What do the Wizards even do with him going into next year? I do want to know the answer to that question. Plus, will there be any ramifications from the fight that happened with Charlotte and Detroit as Detroit broke that Hornets win streak? I'll talk about all these things coming up on this week's Power Rankings. So, the Fulton, Kentucky Zombie Tier will be the first stop of my next train of thought.